It's been 17 years since Bungie has released a title outside of the Halo series. It was obvious that the passion and care that went into the first Halo games began to run dry with each iteration. After Reach, Bungie decided that it was going to leave its exclusive post with Microsoft's IP and reinvigorate themselves with an ambitious, bold new take on shooters that would rival the impact of the original Halo on the genre and their future on consoles. This undertaking would eventually be called Destiny, a 10-year plan that would build upon each previous entry of the series to provide an epic experience for gamers to absorb themselves in for an entire console generation. Unfortunately, at this point, it's failing to provide anything more than your average run-of-the-mill shooter. Throughout its development, Destiny has been likened to many things. If you're expecting a massively multiplayer experience, the only similarity you'll find is its tendency of repetitious content and grinding. Destiny does manage to make a strong impression as you're introduced to its silky smooth controls, responsive aiming, and its adaptable enemy AI that feels like it's ripped straight from Halo. But that's not the only thing that's torn from Halo, as your borderline mute character is awoken by a talkative companion who will guide you through each and every objective of the game. A companion that takes the form of a small floating robot with a blue light that is part of a mysterious ancient alien artifact. The similarities don't stop there. While the initial plot that's set up for the player is intriguing and leaves room for an interesting story to develop and expand on, it never comes. By the end of the 10-hour campaign, you'll know about as much as you did after the first 10 minutes. Nothing substantial manages to happen the entire time. The star-studded cast, including Peter Dinklage as your companion Ghost, do a serviceable job in voice acting for the most part, but at times can fall flat. Marty O'Donnell provided the game with an outstanding soundtrack that frequently intensifies encounters and adds emotional weight to scenes that the writing couldn't, just before he was fired. The campaign is spread across 4 planets that offer a relatively decent-sized hub area connecting each grouping of missions that allow you to progress throughout the story. In between missions, you'll be able to visit the Tower, which will allow you to pick up bounties that raise reputation with one of the several faction vendors that can be used to purchase gear in between kicking around a soccer ball, jumping up trees, seeing how close you can get to ledges before falling off, and dancing for attention while hoping for a crowd to gather. There is no real interaction, as the game lacks any economy, trading, or dueling. While completing missions, you'll have Borderlands-style loot drop from enemies and chests that will be used to upgrade your character, allowing you to contend with more difficult content. You'll also receive experience as you play that will level you up to 20, unlocking abilities for each of the game's 3 classes. The Titan, a powerhouse that utilizes the power of guns and grenades to crush their enemies, and also has a bubble shield in one spec. The Warlock, who harnesses the explosive power of grenades along with the kinetic destruction of guns to perforate all their foes, and also allow teammates to recharge to their special better in an alternate spec. And last but not least, the Hunter, a unique class that can gun and grenade with the best of them when he's not breaking the game with his Blade Dancer spec. After reaching level 20, you'll be able to relive the content that you just completed with a difficulty increase while waiting for gear with light points to drop that'll thrust your character through the 20s, leading you to eventually be eligible and participating in the high-octane raid, the Vault of Glass. A labyrinth consisting of an unheard of 2 bosses and a puzzle that relinquish gear upon completing the buggy encounters that will allow you to complete the raid easier the next time. With enough repetition of this raid and repeating daily quests and sitting around watching the sky waiting for public events to occur, you'll break into the elite level 30 club, hitting cap. But don't worry, it's all well worth it, as none of this will really matter in the game's limited subpar multiplayer experience. All your hard work will pay off as your character's stats and weapon damage from hours of grinding are met on the field by a level 7 whose mom just picked up the game for him that same day, and his uncommon fusion rifle with a fast charge rate obliterates through the competition. The bonus abilities on the high-end gear do give high-level players an advantage in some situations, depending on what it does, but the lack of any constant playlist that allows for level advantages to be turned on in a gear-based game is contradictory to the game itself. On a normal day, Bungie, the people who brought us the extremely customizable and diverse multiplayer of the Halo games, allow you to play what is basically 2 game types with 2 team sizes each. You'll either be playing with 6 or 12 people in a control point game or team deathmatch. A few days out of the month, you'll be allowed the privilege of playing a 3rd game type for a limited time before returning back to the 2. That, along with the unbalanced weapons and classes, make for a forgettable multiplayer experience. The auto rifle tends to be the go-to primary weapon for the majority of players, while there's far too much special ammo littering the battlefield, encouraging people to camp areas that take advantage of close or far-range encounters by supplying them with a constant supply of ammo for their shotguns or sniper rifles respectively. The upgrade system for the gear is a unique and inventive one that allows you to customize and enhance your items through utilization and using resources to craft improvements onto each item's skill tree. The environments are richly detailed, sporting some of the most insanely detailed skyboxes in the industry. But they can begin to wear their welcome thin once you've seen the same locations a dozen or so times. As someone who is a fan of Borderlands, Halo, and MMO grinds, this seems like the perfect game for someone like me. However, it tries to stretch the content too thin, and has annoying mechanics such as the inability to skip cutscenes no matter how many times you're tasked to do the same mission. At launch, I was able to hit level 28 within the first 2 weeks of the game's release with 2 best in slot exotics. Even before the patch that made it easier, it didn't take that long to do. You can purchase a full set within 2 weeks by just saving up Valor and Crucible points alone. The problem comes in when you're forced to grind a mere 10 hours of content for this, and you can't really choose what parts, as the final levels have needless time walls in place. That and there's no challenge to any of it. While some of the activities such as a weekly Nightfall event offer a daunting task to overcome, the reward doesn't justify it, as there's a handful of other activities that can be completed in the same amount of time and easier that yield similar results. This is nowhere else more transparent than the multiplayer payouts. There's absolutely no rhyme or reason behind gear distribution in multiplayer, leaving little motivation to perform well outside of competitive nature. You have as much of a chance of receiving desired gear from getting first every game with a KDR of 8 as you do getting dead last every game. There's just so many poor design choices that don't make any sense. Which is all a shame, really, because at its core, the obvious potential for Destiny is apparent. The gameplay can be as slick as Vaseline on a snail, and there's plenty of great experiences to be had with friends. Whether it's just sitting back and playing through the game together while exploring the planets, or overcoming a great challenge through cooperation and planning, Destiny just feels like a game that didn't even try to meet its potential. It feels like they purposely held back content to justify a multi-staged launch. It effectively breaks down into a Halo game with loot and open structure similar to Borderlands, with a restrictive multiplayer, no customization, and a less structured campaign with no forward-moving narrative. Perhaps Destiny can build upon its solid enough foundations and fill in the massive content gaps it has. But for now, it's largely a missed opportunity with nonsense design choices that feels incomplete.